"Now that the troublemaker is gone, we can relax and have some fun," he whispered to his niece. The troublemaker he was talking about was his daughter. I had to leave home suddenly for a business trip, and I was worried about being away from my daughter for several days. However, John reassured me and saw me off, telling me to go in peace. John and my daughter often spent time together, so I felt comfortable leaving her in his care. But recently, I noticed something strange about my daughter's behavior. Looking back, I should have investigated these feelings further. When I was leaving for work, my daughter clung to my leg, unwilling to let go. I failed to notice her desperate plea for help. I felt like a failure as a mother. Little did I know that John would lock my daughter in the storage room and go on a trip with his niece. I will never forgive John for doing something irreversible to my daughter and niece. My name is Sherry, and I married John the same year I got pregnant with our daughter, Samantha, who is now 5 years old. We met through a mutual friend's introduction, a pretty ordinary way to meet someone. At the time, John, who loved kids, was working at a toy company, and I had just been chosen for a project at work. We were both busy with our jobs, and marriage was the last thing on our minds. But then I found out I was pregnant with Samantha. Having a baby meant taking maternity leave and risking being sidelined from the project. I had seen other women at my company go through this and felt discouraged about my future. Despite seeing others struggle, I felt ashamed for doubting my future. But John comforted me, saying he would quit his job and become a full-time stay-at-home dad. He had taken his current job because he wanted our future kids to play with the toys he helped create. John had already been involved in developing several products, some of which were already on the market. "I want you to fulfill my dream. Let's get married," he told me. His words convinced me to have our daughter. I explained the situation to my company and returned to work 3 months after giving birth. Despite a slight delay, I managed to stay on the project, gaining valuable experience. Returning to work so soon after childbirth was tough, but thinking of John and Samantha waiting at home, I worked harder than ever. Now I'm leading a newly launched project. To spend time with Samantha, I try to leave work on time and work remotely at night during weekdays. Although weekends, work, and business trips are sometimes unavoidable, my daughter always encourages me with strong words. "Do well at work, Mom." Being a full-time stay-at-home dad was still a concept not fully understood by society. But as a family, we managed our roles well and lived happily. One day, my sister-in-law came to talk about her divorce. Her husband, who was 10 years older, often clashed with her due to different ways of thinking. Lately, these disagreements escalated, and the final straw was when he raised his hand against her. "That must have been tough for you," I said to my sister-in-law. "Not at all. I actually feel relieved. I don't have to see my daughter Lily cry anymore," she replied. Lily, her 11-year-old daughter, witnessed her father's violence, and this incident made her start crying, which eventually made him stop. My sister-in-law feared that the violence might eventually turn towards Lily and decided to divorce him. Upon hearing this, John jokingly said, "If you ever need anything, just say the word. I'm always home," making everyone laugh. I agreed with John's words. My sister-in-law had helped convince our in-laws when John decided to quit his job and become a full-time stay-at-home dad. "It's not about being a man or a woman nowadays. Whoever can do it should do it," she had said. Without her words, we might not have had a good relationship with our in-laws. Our happiness is in part thanks to her. "We're in this together. Feel free to rely on us anytime," I assured her. "Really, thank you. Actually, I've been thinking about moving to your neighborhood. Wouldn't it be a bother?" she asked. "Not at all," I replied. She had to leave the rental apartment she shared with her ex-husband. Going back to her in-laws' house, which was an hour's drive away, would make her commute difficult, and Lily would have to change schools. Luckily, our house was within Lily's school district, so they found a vacant apartment nearby and decided to move in. John suggested, and we agreed to look after Lily after school until her mother finished work. My sister-in-law had been working part-time, but following her divorce, she started working as a full-time employee with her working hours increasing. She was worried about her daughter Lily being home alone after school. Lily was already in 5th grade, and my sister-in-law was concerned she might be overprotective. However, John convinced her it's better to be cautious before something happens, at least while she's in elementary school. John had always adored his niece, and she affectionately referred to him as Big Brother. I also convinced my sister-in-law that it would be good for her daughter to have my daughter as a playmate. So we agreed that her daughter would stay with us when my sister-in-law was at work. This marked the beginning of our new family life. Since we lived close by, my daughter and her cousin saw each other often. They quickly adapted to the new routine, and everything seemed to be off to a smooth start. Then my daughter suddenly began to resist when I left for work. She had always been used to seeing me off since a very young age, so I assumed she was comfortable with it. Was she feeling lonely, or was there some other anxiety? I was puzzled by this new behavior. "Mommy's just going to work. I'll be back tonight," I reassured her. But despite my words, my daughter clung to my leg, unwilling to let go. When I asked what was wrong, she just shook her head. "Lily will be here this evening, so you won't be lonely, right?" I said. But instead of comforting her, my daughter gripped my leg even tighter. Each time I faced this situation, John gently coaxed her off me, saying, "It's okay. Let mommy go to work now. Let's wave goodbye to her." With John's encouragement, my daughter would reluctantly wave goodbye to me. I wondered what was causing her to behave this way. Despite my concerns, my job kept me from spending as much time with her as I wanted. Even when I discussed it with John, he optimistically suggested maybe something happened at preschool. Besides, Lily is here too. If there's something she can't talk to us about, she might be talking to Lily. "Do you think so?" I asked. "I hope that's the case." "Don't worry. Look at this picture from today." John showed me a photo on his phone of Lily and my daughter whispering to each other, covering their mouths as if sharing a secret. "See this? Perhaps children find it easier to talk amongst themselves." I decided not to press my daughter for answers. Lily adored my daughter like a little sister, and I hoped her behavior was just a phase. I was nearing a point where my work would settle down, so I planned to take some leave and spend time with my daughter soon. However, shortly after, a business trip came up suddenly, and I had to be away from home for 5 days. Despite my concerns about my daughter, John's encouraging words, "Don't worry, go ahead," prompted me to pack my bags and leave. 2 days later, while Lily was visiting, I left the house with John, my daughter, and Lily seeing me off. I remembered John and Lily smiling broadly, but I couldn't shake my worry about my daughter. Little did I know that something unexpected was unfolding at home. While I was away, John started preparing to leave with Lily. Seeing this, Lily anxiously asked, "Isn't Samantha coming with us?" "Samantha is going to join her mom on the business trip. As soon as her mom comes back from the office, they'll head out together," John reassured Lily with this story. John then instructed my daughter to look for something for me in the storage room, telling her there was an important item of mine there. Samantha believed him and headed to the storage room to search for a non-existent piece of jewelry. Unaware of this, my daughter did not notice the door being shut behind her. John muttered to himself, "The nuisance is gone, now we can relax," then took Lily's hand, who still looked uneasy, and left for their trip. 4 days later, John returned from the trip in a great mood, casually chatting with a downcast Lily. The trip was so much fun, wasn't it? Right before opening the front door, John's eyes caught the storage shed in the corner of the yard, and he turned pale. It was then he remembered that he had left my daughter behind. She must have come out by now. After Lily overheard John's revelation that he hadn't locked the shed, she exclaimed in shock and ran towards it, ignoring John's attempts to stop her. Lily called out my daughter's name as she approached the shed. What they saw next was an unidentifiable liquid seeping from under the shed's door. "What is this? No way!" Lily panicked, trying to open the shed door, but John stopped her, saying, "Stop, don't look. Lily." "What do you mean, don't look? Is Samantha in there?" Lily demanded. My niece turned pale and blamed her husband. "Why did you leave her there? You said Samantha was going with Sherry on her business trip." Lily's cries of anguish echoed around us. John, being blamed by Lily, trembled and muttered, "What have I done?" It was then that I finally spoke up from behind him, my voice so cold it sent chills down my spine. "Where have you been?" My daughter, Samantha, standing next to me, mirrored my anger despite her youth. She looked at her father with eyes full of accusations. John hesitantly turned around and froze in shock upon seeing us. "Sherry, Samantha," he stammered. Contrary to his astonishment, Lily burst into tears upon seeing Samantha and hugged her tightly. "Thank goodness, Samantha. You're safe." Hugged by Lily, Samantha shifted her gaze away from John and hugged Lily back, as if confirming her safety. I wondered how much these children had been affected by John's actions. I stood protectively in front of my daughter Samantha and niece Lily, yet John showed faint concern. "I'm glad you're safe," he muttered towards Samantha. "Glad she's safe after you left her behind." "What are you saying now?" I demanded. "Samantha said she wanted to be with you." "And why are you here, Sherry? Weren't you on a business trip? You were supposed to return tomorrow." "Oh, so you thought you'd be back before I got home. Could it be that you often leave Samantha like this when I'm away?" I accused him. John fell silent at my words. His silence was more affirming than anything else. "I've already heard the story from Samantha. I'll be hearing it from Lily as well," I said, turning to Lily, who was still embracing Samantha. She met my gaze firmly and nodded as if she had made a decision. The fact that I was able to rescue my daughter Samantha was a stroke of sheer luck. The thought of what could have happened if my business trip dates hadn't changed sent shivers down my spine. On the day I was supposed to leave, I indeed boarded the Amtrak. However, I received a sudden notification that the trip was canceled, so I got off the train mid-journey and returned home. Since the trip was called off, I could return home directly, arriving earlier than my usual time. Finally, I would have a chance to talk with Samantha. I took a taxi from the station, rushing home. As I got out of the taxi and approached the front door, I heard a voice calling Mommy. Thinking Samantha had seen me and was running towards me, I turned towards the voice, only to be shocked. Samantha's voice was coming from inside the storage shed. In a panic, I opened the shed door to find my daughter there, drenched in sweat and sobbing uncontrollably. At her feet lay the burst remnants of a water-filled bouncy ball I had given her. This toy was developed by John when he was still working at the toy manufacturer. I had given it to Samantha, hoping to cheer her up when she first started showing signs of distress. Apparently, she panicked when she realized the door was shut, either throwing or stepping on the ball, causing it to burst. The liquid seeping out of the shed was from this ruptured bouncy ball. The floor was also scattered with Samantha's old clothes. "What happened? Why are you in here?" I hugged my crying daughter and asked her. What she told me then ignited a fury in me the likes of which I had never felt before in my life. Samantha said John had asked her to look for my jewelry. She was deeply shocked from being left behind and being locked in, even though the door wasn't locked. She thought she would come out on her own, but being suddenly shut in was frightening even for adults. It's not surprising that Samantha panicked and couldn't open the shed. Now I finally understand why Samantha started acting out. My husband would have noticed the cause anyway. After all, he was the cause of it. After we started looking after Lily, John began to favor her, neglecting Samantha. My daughter felt increasingly lonely as John paid attention only to Lily. Samantha, caring for me and my busy schedule, could only express her feelings in such a way. It seemed she also knew Lily was troubled by John's behavior. The photo of them whispering might have been taken while they were discussing this. Samantha really wanted to talk to me about Lily and hoped I could help in some way. However, Samantha didn't have the right words to accurately convey this. Unsure of how to express it to me, Samantha's words to me were hesitant, yet she cared deeply for Lily despite feeling lonely herself. What a kind-hearted child she is. After hearing from Samantha, I immediately called John, but he didn't answer. No matter how many times I called, usually he would call back right away, and it was unusual for him not to answer. Something was wrong. Believing this, I reached out to my sister-in-law. During this conversation, I learned a shocking fact. John had told her he was going on a trip with Samantha and Lily. John had contacted my sister-in-law as soon as he found out about my business trip. Sherry is going on a long business trip. During that time, I thought of taking Samantha and Lily on a trip because Samantha might feel lonely. What do you think? John had lied to my sister-in-law, saying Samantha and Lily wanted to go to a theme park. And my sister-in-law agreed, thinking it would be good for Lily. Of course, I hadn't heard anything about this plan from John. Hearing this, I felt as if the blood had drained from my face. Could John have been planning to leave Samantha alone at home during this trip? I informed my sister-in-law that Samantha was actually at home. When I mentioned that I couldn't reach John, she said she would try calling him herself, and we ended the call. I thought something was off and checked around the house. I was shocked. There were lots of prepared meals in the fridge, and the water heater for the bath was left on. Could it be that he prepared all this so Samantha could stay alone? That is, John had planned to leave our 5-year-old daughter alone for 4 days with just these arrangements. My sister-in-law managed to reach John, who was apparently at the theme park with Lily and casually said, "I'll have to hang up. Our turn for the attraction is coming." She also received pictures of Lily alone at the park, confirming Lily's safety. Angry yet relieved about Lily's safety, my sister-in-law and I decided to wait for John and Lily's return. John, perhaps as an alibi, had sent me a picture of Samantha and Lily, which must have been taken previously at our house. My sister-in-law received photos of Lily playing at the theme park. There was even a fake story of the two having fun together to pretend for it. So John, believing he had fooled us, returned home in high spirits, having completely forgotten. The reason my husband wanted to go on a trip only with his niece so desperately was beyond understanding. His affection for his niece was one thing, but his actions were abnormal. When my sister-in-law burst in out of breath, likely having run here straight from work, Lily left Samantha and ran to her aunt, saying, "Mom, Lily, I'm sorry." Then, for the first time, Lily told us everything about what my husband had done. According to what Samantha told me, it appeared that after we started looking after Lily, John began to pay attention only to her. But in reality, it was more distressing for Lily. John had an unusual obsession with taking photos of Lily. At first, Lily agreed to John's requests for photos, believing they were to be sent to her mother, and she smiled for the camera. However, over time, John's behavior began to escalate. He started making specific demands for poses, and Lily began to feel uncomfortable. When Lily once refused and said no, John threatened her, saying he would tell her mother, making it seem like he was blaming Lily for not complying, manipulating Lily's desire not to upset her mom. John continued to take her pictures, and eventually he took her on a trip, just the two of them. Lily told us that she really didn't want to go on the trip. It was creepy when he held her hand. When my sister-in-law yelled at John, saying, "How old was she? You're talking," and hugged Lily tightly. Again, Lily, like Samantha, had been enduring John's behavior, not wanting to worry her aunt, and John had misunderstood this as Lily being fond of him. My sister-in-law tearfully apologized to Lily for not sensing the danger and agreeing to the trip so casually. She regretted her complacency for always having John look after Lily. Lily shook her head in her mother's arms and said in a trembling voice that she never wanted to see John again. John began to panic pathetically at this, saying, "Don't say that, Lily. I just wanted to show you affection. Stay away from Lily from now on." But then my sister-in-law demanded he delete the photos and snatched his phone from him. In his panicked state, however, upon seeing the photo folder, she was lost for words. There was an abnormal amount of photos of Lily saved. Lily's expressions in the photos seemed like forced smiles, but it was clear she was frightened. In retrospect, all the photos John sent never had Lily looking directly at the camera. John must have noticed the change in Lily's expressions too. That's why John only sent photos where Lily's expressions weren't clear. Yet he let his desires run wild and took Lily away. Disgusting. I felt nauseated by John's abnormal behavior. My sister-in-law, holding the phone tightly, seemed frozen in place. We both shielded our daughters behind us, confronting John. There was no way I could forgive him for leaving Samantha behind, and I didn't want him near our daughters ever again. All feelings of affection had vanished in an instant. John continued to make excuses, only further frightening Samantha and Lily. I presented him with the divorce papers I had prepared during his trip, gathered our belongings, took Samantha, and left the house. I couldn't bear to share the same air with him for another moment. My sister-in-law and Lily followed us out. All that followed were my husband's sad screams. Afterward, I took my sister-in-law and Lily to their parents' house and informed them about John's behavior. When I mentioned leaving him with the divorce papers, my in-laws promised to handle everything from there. They assured us they would prevent John from approaching us again. Lily finally seemed to find some peace upon hearing their words. My sister-in-law and Lily decided to stay with my in-laws for the time being, planning to sort out work and school later. Though it likely meant Lily would have to change schools, we couldn't discount the possibility of John lurking around her school route. Samantha and I decided to return to my parents' home too. During John's trip, I had been managing work, household chores, and childcare alone. Thankfully, Samantha was a resilient child, and I felt confident that we could manage well on our own. Living without John, just the two of us seemed entirely feasible. Those hellish 4 days indeed contributed to my newfound confidence. For a while, we'll live at my parents' house, grateful for their kindness. but I plan to move closer to my workplace before Samantha starts elementary school. We started our new lives, but John was still stuck in the past. Thanks to my in-laws, I was able to finalize the divorce from John without ever having to see him. But he continued to call afterward and even showed up at my parents' house. Despite being cut off by my in-laws from any contact with me, my daughter, and the residents of his parents' home, John pathetically tried to seek reconciliation. His words only instilled fear in me. I asked my parents to contact the police, who came and took away John, who was screaming at our doorstep. He was served a restraining order by the police and finally seemed to understand he was alone. All this destruction was his doing, and it was too late for regrets. I wondered how John, having been a stay-at-home dad, planned to live since then, but that was no longer my concern. Samantha had been down for a while after the incident, but she's finally starting to smile again. Though divorced from John, we still keep in touch with my sister-in-law and Lily, and their smiles are returning too, to overwrite the traumatic memories. We are planning a trip to the theme park with Lily, just the four of us. I'm looking forward to creating many happy memories for Samantha and Lily.